we're matching the resources, because ideally, we want to make sure that the firefighters and our paramedics are there for when somebody's heart stops or when they stop breathing. We don't want them to be distracted on the sprained ankle or whatever.
So what percentage of the time does fire department, first responders get there before y'all get there, on average?
65% last time I looked, which has been, and I can't, that's not specific to River
Right, no,
so
just in
East
general.
Philly may be going, we get there more faster than that.
And is there not a way to leverage that, since they're there on the scene, to triage? I mean, I know you're separate entities and there's probably liability issues, but
No,
to
and
help you discern, you know, what level of person needs to come?
that happens. Sometimes they cancel us outright. If the patient doesn't need care, my wife is diabetic, for example, and you know, if her sugar were to drop and they were able to administer some sugar and get her up and eating, they might cancel the ambulance if she don't want to go to the hospital. So that does happen to some extent today. But again, you all know what a fire truck and the people on a fire truck costs, and while that's a municipality's decision to make, we are not dictating what they do and don't go on. We're also, the system was designed around not adding additional expense to the municipalities for first response necessarily. So, like I said, we do that a little bit today, but we kind of want, as we go through this, it becomes more and more evident that we need to take a close look at being a little bit more tactical in how we do that and the tools that we do that with. So, you know, again, an SUV is one of, you know, it's $40,000 versus $300,000, and the labor is 50% of what would be on an ambulance. So, and nurse triage is the same way. They can answer a lot more calls and deal with patients a lot quicker that way than sending an ambulance out to everybody. So,
Has your membership of the, you know, the annual fee thing, is that getting larger or smaller, or is it significant to the entity or not?
Not hugely. It is beneficial for the individual. I mean, I don't want to, please don't. I personally think it's a good advantage for $69 a year to cover your family. I mean, even if you never use it, I think it's money well spent personally. But it's not in any great number that people typically
It doesn't move you financially?
No, sir. Not really. It has to, by state law, it has to wash. We can't lose money at it, but we typically wash pretty even with what we end up writing off and what we collect in that program. So that is one of the, you know, part of what we run into with the last year. We wrote off $42 million in charitable care from our billings, and that's, you know, a lot of people just don't have the means to pay the ambulance bills and things like that, and we don't ask those sort of questions. Obviously, if somebody's truly having a medical emergency, we want to get to them and make sure that they're cared for. But again, some folks are using that for primary care, and if that's the reality of the day, it's just sort of forcing us to take a look at that and go, okay, well, what's a better way to deal with a person that hasn't gotten their blood pressure medicine filled? Do we really want to respond the same way that we respond when their heart stops? So, and we've got some examples there when you mentioned the response time goals of other areas that have lengthened their low acuity or eliminated their low acuity response time goals also. There's a lot of education that goes into that, even on the dispatch level, from the dispatcher sort of explaining to the patient that's called that, hey, we've determined that you're not experiencing medical emergency. We are going to send somebody to you, but maybe X amount of time to sort of manage those expectations. The pie charts there are kind of that reprioritization that you were asking about. It breaks down kind of from a dispatch perspective how 27% of the calls that come in are deemed to be potentially life-threatening, but when we actually get on scene, around 2% truly are. And then out of what we actually get on scene for, 31% of them don't even go to the hospital, as you were discussing before. And with our system redesign, I think it's been about 2 years now, we introduced BLS ambulances to the system, which are the 2 EMTs I was explaining. Part of our plan with this and single responders is to tier that out even further for those lower priority calls. Again, in an attempt to make sure we're getting the right resources to the right patients for their complaints and getting them to the right places. So it may not, in some cases we've been able to use telehealth as an example for people that have let their prescription lapse. And to day an ambulance is going on scene to do that, but they'll say, hey, this is a low acuity complaint. You're not going to die from this. Would you be interested in speaking with an ER physician by telehealth? And if the patient says yes, Medicare and Medicaid are doing it. We have one other commercial insurer that's doing it. Then we'll connect them with a ER physician, and they'll do sort of a video assessment. And with the lady that needed her prescription refilled, we were actually able to get the prescription filled, and have it delivered to her house, and she never had to leave. So we get pretty high satisfaction scores from that. So it's kind of a positive. But so it's just a much larger variety. Our last slide there is currently all EMS systems across the country are more challenged than they ever have been. You know, the staffing and the economics, the dollars are just not keeping up with the system. Since 2019, we've spent between $2 and $4 million out of reserves to help float that ambulance service in the EMS system. As we work through this, we're again having conversations. In the short term, it's probably going to require at least some sort of financial commitment from the member cities to help support what that looks like as we move forward. So we're still working through that with our board, but our board felt it was important that we start sharing the messages with the cities. So we have always appreciated and enjoyed being financially independent. It's just when supply costs and labor costs and all that increase the way these have, it may be surprising, but the federal government does not increase how much they give you nearly as quickly as the inflation increases. So those are the things that we're working through, and as we work through these options, it's, you know, response times are very important for that small percentage of calls, and we're going to keep our eyes on that and make sure that we're delivering that fast service. For the lower priority calls, it is not a quality metric, and that's kind of some of the stuff that we're dealing with. If we don't have to get there in 8 minutes, can we better take care of that patient more economically and make them happier while we're working through that? So I'm happy to take any questions you all have.
Clarification. Do I understand you say that Medicaid and Medicare pay a certain amount, and if that patient is on either one of those, they're not billed for anything above that?
Traditional Medicare, yes, sir. There's, what is it, Medicare MCOs that the commercial insurers will pick up, and they're a little bit different because in how they're structured, and those can be balance billed, but Medicaid cannot. We can't balance bill those at all by state. Excuse me.
Like I say, you have to sign away your life, so to speak, and commit to accept that as full payment for services rendered, or they won't do business with you as an ambulance service.
Okay, 'cause that, I know when I retired, one of the retirement programs I went to, that was something that was stressed to buy that particular service because of the, let's say you're just living off of Social Security, and you need to go to the hospital, and the cost of an ambulance ride at that time was $1,000 or more.
Double or triple now.
Yeah. So they said, make sure you get that because it was low cost. $59 a year or
69, yes,
something
sir.
like that. But now you're saying that.
So, yes, sir, for traditional Medicare, we can't balance bill. It'll take care of I believe it takes care of the 20% copay that a lot of folks have, but also a lot of people are getting in the managed care programs instead of traditional Medicare. In those managed care programs, you can balance bill those patients. And that's where your $69 membership would come in. We actually can't give the membership to Medicaid patients.
Still cheap insurance.
It is, yes, sir.
Have you talked to the colleges down on getting people into medical services?
They are, you know, one of the challenges, and I kind of hinted on it without getting too far in, we spent a fair amount of time talking to our folks about why they leave, because we've invested a lot into, you know, trying to make a happy workplace for them. And it really is, and I still am a paramedic. It's just been a long time since I've been on an ambulance, but it burns you out. I mean, they stay busy, and staying busy with critical calls, that's a different kind of stress, but when you're out, I remember the first time I was just worn out, and I'm like, man, they use like 10 nasal cannulas and that's it, which is nothing, I mean, it's.
And I went to a graduation